forget the title that he had, but yeah, none of this was around when I was in school. I'm so excited for all the education type stuff that's happening with comics now. It's so great.
Yeah, he comes from an educational background. Something I didn't realize that until I read Dragon Hoops, that he was like a math teacher, and then
Yeah.
yeah, now he just does this full time, which is awesome, which deservedly so. I think what you were saying, his title, he was some sort of ambassador of the I want to say it was the Harvey Awards last year.
That's so cool.
Yeah, like a judge or something. But yeah, he's always, hey, look who it is.
Hey, sorry about that, guys. I realized I was like, hey, wait a minute, I should probably log on a minute or two early. I didn't mean to keep you waiting.
You're fine.
Yeah,
I'll start letting people
we're just chilling.
Yeah.
Right on.
People in like a minute or so. So this time, since it's not my students, I'm gonna do like a 10-minute like defensive comics and education kind of a thing. And then I'll just kind of turn it loose on you guys like we did last time, kind of just talking about how we got started, the process with George and those kinds of things. And then I have like one or two questions I'd like to ask, and then we'll turn it up to the audience. There's a lot of Project Lit people coming tonight, which is great. Yeah, I'm obviously, I'm a Project Lit advisor. So we put that word out to the community. So there'll probably be a lot of students and stuff here too, which would be awesome.
Really cool. Yeah, Tim, as far as I'm concerned, Tim, if you just kind of keep throwing us like the cues of what you want us to talk about, we'll take them all. So
okay,
no problem.
Right. So let me let's see, start letting people in. All right, and of course we'll do the standard. Give everybody a few minutes to get in here, and we'll start in a couple minutes. And hopefully my Facebook Live is going as well on my Teaching with Comics page. I know a lot of people just wanted to do it that way tonight too. I need like an assistant or something at some point, but I miss in-person stuff because there's always somebody to do that for you,
I know.
That's true. You got to put all the pressure rests on you, Tim. Doing a great job.
Thanks. Last time when I did it with Nate Powell for his new book, I didn't record it. Somehow it like disappeared. I was like, oh no, I wanted to put it on YouTube, but then I found out how to do my Facebook page had recorded it. So luckily Facebook, it's like, yeah, it's like, where do you put it? Do you do Facebook Live? Do you do Instagram Live? Do you do but yeah.
I think they want you to put it everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Who knows?
So, and now I have to make sure I admit everybody as they pop in, because Zoom has good security features now that they don't want to just open up to the world. So hopefully if anybody's waiting a couple seconds, I'll make sure I let everybody in. So welcome everybody. We're gonna wait another minute or two, make sure everybody kind of logs in and is ready to go. We will have a Q&A session. I know there's a lot of Project Lit people coming tonight, which is awesome. I'm also a Project Lit advisor. So when you come in, if you would just make sure you mute yourself for now. And so I made this more of a meeting rather than a webinar, because I prefer personally to be able to see people when they're asking the questions. So towards the end, if you want to put in the chat, if you want to put in your questions, and then we can either just ask the question from the chat, or if you were brave enough to unmic yourself and turn your camera on, we'd love to see you and have you ask the question kind of more in person too. Like I said, we'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll get started as everybody's coming in here. We had about 50 people sign up, which is great. On Memorial Day weekend of all things. I didn't totally even forgot that it was a holiday weekend.
Yeah, and thanks for working with our availability too. I know that we had some stipulations, and I know that everybody's looking for that 7 p.m. Friday night book panel. It's like usually the top of everyone's Friday night plan. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's usually Friday or Sunday night, or whatever we can do. And of course, I'll also share this out on the YouTube channel so we can have this and the share in perpetuity. Because a lot of teachers have asked me, it was kind of neat. They're like, can you share the link with us? We want to use this in our lessons next year. So that's pretty cool that they'll have access to the video and the questions and things like that. So, all right.
Well, absolutely, Tim. That was one of the reasons we were so excited to come back. Was to be able to help you with that resource and have this sort of in perpetuity for more people that wanted to learn about the book.
Yeah, so Justin and Steve and Harmony, also the artist, were kind enough to join with my Project Lit group a couple weeks ago. And because of privacy with my district, we're kind of more locked down, which is fine. I understand that. So I couldn't share that with the wider the wider world. In fact, my daughter's social studies teacher I had invited and he couldn't get in. I felt so bad. So I sent him the link for tonight. So. All right, so we're going to start with, I put together a kind of a brief intro in terms of why comics in education. Usually I do like 3-hour professional development, so I'll try to condense it to 10 minutes of why comics in education. And then, Justin and Stephen being kind enough to be with us here tonight, we'll talk about the process of creating this fantastic book that I use right alongside with the March graphic novel trilogy in my own classroom, and we'll talk about that as well. And I actually just started, I didn't even know, sadly enough, Justin mentioned in our last meeting that George Takei has an autobiography. And so I started reading this today, and I've already started putting lots of sticky notes in it and things that I'm gonna use in my classroom next year. So let me go ahead and pull up my, share my screen here. Okay, and hopefully that all works out well. All right, and then let me start presenting.
Tim, I'm curious, was it my comment about the dog that got you to dig into the stars?
It was just that I never even thought to look it up, but it was, you had mentioned that he wrote about this in his autobiography. And I was like, I didn't even think about where this all got started. And then as I'm reading through the autobiography today, I'm picturing the graphic novel in my mind. I'm going, oh, okay, yeah. So I'll talk about this, but I think what I'm going to do next year is I'm going to do text to text comparisons in my classroom, and how you all were able to interpret his own words and the visual literacy aspect of all that. But it's fantastic. The autobiography is fantastic, and then what you guys were able to do with that is so neat. So.
Yeah, it really served as the blueprint for what was to come. Like that was really the starting point.
And so, I mean, well, I was one of my questions, but did you all read this? Did one of you like read the autobiography first, and then approach George, or like how did that? I guess we can just start with that. I mean, because that's the question I wanted to ask you. Like, yeah. What was that first thing that got this started?
I think it was really the TED Talk, right, Justin, that sort of drew our attention to his message. He's been for many years giving these talks, trying to spread awareness of this part of history, and certainly, yeah, the TED Talk made an impression on me, and it was from there that we dove into To the Stars after the process really began. But yeah, Justin can talk more about on that as well.
Yeah, I have a slightly different experience, and that was I don't remember being intimately familiar with a lot of George's most recent like the TED Talk. I don't know that I was really familiar with that when the idea of pairing, but I was aware of George's experience, right? Just for his other previous decades of sharing. And so, and just, really making sure that the story was known. And it was then that, it wasn't until we started talking to George and he was like, oh, well, I'm sorry, we had seen the TED Talk on our own sort of as we were discussing what we could do with it. The TED Talk, came into our quick research. But George is one of the ones who really said, you guys have to go start with the autobiography. I've covered a lot of this before. You're going to want, this is a great blueprint to use. And so it was really George steering us in that direction, and his desire to use it as, sort of a foundational text for the book. And it definitely, we're working, I think independently and together, we're both working on some additional graphic memoir type projects for the future that will be talked about in the future. And I will say that they don't all have a book like To the Stars to lean into to help you get to that sort of basis of the story. And we really were well served by having that as a guide.
That's how I got started knowing about was the TED Talk too. I don't remember. I mean, I teach U.S. history, and I probably was just looking for resources on Japanese American internment camps, and I came across the TED Talk, and it just blew my mind. And I show it to my students every year, and it's just amazing. So that's cool that it kind of just all kind of cycled like that.
Yeah, it was a strangely organic process to which it all came together. I mean, I know at the very beginning, the goal wasn't, hey, Stephen and Justin are going to write this book with George. We were really looking at sort of an advisory capacity and kind of helping put together teams. And then just sort of as the vision for everything kind of started clicking, again, just pieces all fell into place, and it was really interesting. So we're very fortunate for all of us. It worked out for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, and this is a growing genre in the medium of comic books, is the graphic memoir, and there's just, I think probably the first one I read was Barefoot Jen, about the bombing of Hiroshima, and it's just so powerful. So awesome. All right, so I got ahead of myself here, so let me share my screen again, and like I said, I'll talk a little bit about why comics and education and those sorts of things. Like I said, I need a assistant here. Here we go. All right. So Justin, so again, Harmony was kind enough to be with us in our last meeting. She couldn't make it tonight, but she is the power behind the visuals in this book. And she has a new book coming out in the fall, which I've already pre-ordered. And First Second does, and Top Shelf, some of these companies, graphics from Scholastic, are really pumping out a lot of these graphic novels that are perfect for the classroom. Justin, author, publishing industry veteran, avid inline skating enthusiast, mixing the curiosity of anthropologist, tenacity of a dogged journalist, and a demonstrated command of communication of arts. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I think the rest of it was blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter.
There we go. Right. But I'm really curious. I know Justin's got some exciting things coming up down the line, and I'm really curious to kind of hear about all those things too. So then Stephen, written for Top Shelf, Archie Comics, and I said this last meeting, Archie is my daughter's favorite comic. She's in high school. She's got a board game. She's got the soundtrack. She's got all the Archie comics. Like, it blows my mind that she's so totally into this stuff. Hates the TV show, but loves the comics and things.
Oh, wow.
Right, yeah.
Very different.
Yeah, right. Really different. Okay, so this is me. If you, I have a lot of resources on my website, teachingwithcomics.com, lesson plans, lesson ideas, resources. It's all for free. It's just literally what I do in my classroom. I'm at History Comics on social media. My email is historycomicsguy@gmail.com. If you ever need any help with an administrator or getting things approved for the classroom in terms of comics and graphic novels, I'd be more than happy to help you out with that. If you have any questions following this up, or if you're watching the video after the live session here, you're welcome to get in contact with me, and I'd be more than happy to help you. I do kind of just want to give a shout out to Learning for Justice. Used to be Teaching Tolerance, obviously changed their name. I think that was a good choice. But there's lots of resources that are out there in terms of what weren't there when I was in school, and the things that we didn't talk about when I was in school. And so I know my own school district, Wissahickon School District, the kids just put on a kind of a rally, if you will, in the stadium for anti-Asian bias, to draw attention to that. And so a lot of the civil rights that movements that we're seeing today is being led by our students, which is really powerful. On my website, I have one section specifically for AAPI type resources. And so these are just some of the books that I have there, both prose, memoir, graphic novels, comics, some free online comics, including, and we had talked about this in our last meeting, comics can be used in lots of different ways. And this was one that was printed in the Philadelphia Inquirer, I'm in Philadelphia, about how to tell the difference between our allies, the Chinese, and our enemies, the Japs. And of course, I don't want to make it too big. I don't know, all who's here, but certainly a lot of racist ideas in these comics and things that were printed widely during World War II. And I just recently finished reading this, From a Whisper to a Rallying Cry, The Killing of Vincent Chen. I had no idea. And I was in school when this court case was going on, and this man who was brutally murdered in the streets with a bat by two white men. And it really kind of kickstarted the Asian American civil rights movement, the modern civil rights movement. And I had no idea. And so again, I'm loving that we're talking about these things in our classrooms. And a lot of times it's these graphic novels that gets the conversation just started. So I'm not going to read everything, but again, comics are literature, comics are real reading, and there's lots of different reasons for that. I mean, we've got the Bayo tapestry, the Mexican Kodaks. Visual literacy has been with us for quite a long time. My own kids being, my own son being a reluctant reader in the beginning, it was comics that gave him the confidence and the engagement to want to read. But I also use it with my AP students and college students and high-level readers. It's used for all levels through college and university. Own voice, we'll talk about a lot on my website about how to make comics, and we want students to be able to own their history and share their voice and the issues that they might be having. The ideas of pre-writing, 21st century reading, because it's like reading hypertext online. So all those things, again, that's not why I'm here tonight. We're here to talk about the book, but literally it's written into our Common Core standards. And whenever I give presentations, I know who the administrators are in the audience because, you know, they sit up when I say Common Core. And I always say in Common Core, it literally says to use graphic novels. So if you have an issue with an administrator, you can say, well, you know what? If we're not using comics in our classroom, we're actually not following Common Core requirements. So put that one in your back pocket. That's always a good one to have. I always share widely about the research. I'm a reading specialist. I wrote my master's thesis on using comics in the classroom. There's lots of research that's out there right now. We know that readers are exposed to higher level vocabulary in comics than they are in adult prose books. We know that. But I put up these two images because on the left is what I share from Reading with Pictures, who shared this study. And on the right, Jarrett Lerner, if you go to jarrettlerner.com, he's a friend of mine. He took all these words and put it into this visual. And I'm like, I got it. Like in 5 seconds, I have the visual part of it. And I'm going to remember the Spider-Man, and I'm going to remember all those things more than I'm going to remember the study that was done. And again, I'll be happy to share all this stuff with you. The first week of school, my students come in. I don't give them my textbook. I don't give them my syllabus. I don't tell them why they need to be afraid of me. They have comic books out on their classroom, on their tables, and they analyze comics from different decades as historical artifacts. They take a look at the letters to the editor, the advertisements, gender roles, and all these things. And so it opens up that idea of what is social studies, right? We need to take the capital H away from history and make it more accessible. And comic books, just like hip hop, we annotate both 80s and 90s hip hop and contemporary hip hop for civil rights issues, and we compare them with songs from the 1960s. And just like a letter from George Washington is a primary source, so are all these others. This is a panel from the March graphic novel. Like I said, this is from book 1. I use this with my students alongside of, they call this enemy. And I encourage my students to draw their own interpretation. I stop them. As John Lewis and the others are coming across the crest of the bridge and they see the troopers down at the bottom, what do you think is going to happen next? You own that. What do you think is going to be? And we'll talk about how you don't have to be the world's greatest artist to do this. I'm not. You can use like Pixton.com, which is an online comics creation. You can use stick figures. It's about the storytelling. And we want our students to own that story. So in here, this is an image, Justin and Stephen and Harmon and I were talking about this in our last meeting, and it really stuck with me. This is an image from the comic book, a wordless page. And we need to tell our students, like, don't skip the wordless pages. In a lot of cases, they're the most important pages, and we can't skip the images. So the text is from George Takei's autobiography. And this is a lesson I'm going to do in my classroom next year. And he describes exactly what we're seeing in this image. And so we can talk about, and that's a high level skill, a high level reading literacy skill, text to text analysis. So we can take a look at the prose, we can take a look at how it was imagined by Harmony, and we can discuss, well, what would you do and how would you do it differently and those sorts of things. So I'm going to continue with the same excerpt. And when we talk about here, just to kind of give you a sense of scale, and that's what a, sorry, I got people in the waiting room, let me let them in. Admit all, there we go. So it gives you a sense of scale. It gives you a sense of emotion. And that's the power of graphic novels, is they make us emotionally involved with the characters in ways that prose, for the most part, just can't. And we see these, we see George Takei, kind of just standing here and looking as these soldiers come up and they bang on the door to tell them that it's, it's time to go. We see the mom who is reacting after the atomic bombing of Japan, and they know that they have relatives there, right? Like these things that I never even thought about. And we can take a look at the camps. And when my students see images like this, they immediately make contact and connections to the Jewish Holocaust. They immediately make connections to slave ships. They immediately, like, it's that visual connection that happens in a way that prose just doesn't do. So then text to text, again, and I'm not going to play this for you, but if you go on YouTube, Why I Love a Country That Once Betrayed Me, this is the TED Talk that we were all talking about. There's parts in this TED Talk, my high school students, you don't hear a sound in the room when he talks about the all Japanese unit climbing the cliff to go after I'll let you, I don't want to spoil it, I can't do it justice, but but this is also text. Audio is text, audiobooks, comic books, prose, poetry, hip hop, songs. We need to open our minds about what literacy is. And so I would start with having my students watch the TED Talk, and then we can start going into the comic, the autobiography, and then we can also take a look at other books. And I have a collection of letters from the Japanese American soldiers who, despite everything, volunteered to prove their loyalty as American citizens. And so I go back now to that image that I showed you to begin, where we have the Black people sitting in the bus station. Well, now this family were on work release, and so they were allowed to leave the encampment and go out and work. And they talk about the Black people and the segregation in the South, and how despite everything that went on with these Japanese Americans, that she says she wondered how we could be treated. I was told by the bus driver to sit up front, and it really hurt to think there were others who have been treated worse than we had, and for so many more years. So now we're widening the conversation. Civil rights is still going on. Civil rights issues is not just a black and white issue. We need to talk about all these things. And I will have the students' attention a lot faster with a graphic novel than I will if I open up with a textbook. Guaranteed. We talk about habeas corpus and how it's legal to do away with the legal right for evidence to be arrested in this country. So again, I don't want to get all into this. I'd be happy to share all this stuff, but habeas corpus, in the US Constitution, this is legal to do so in terms of emergency, public safety. And what does that mean, right? How can we interpret that? And I think I did it. Good. I didn't want to take up too much time. So let me stop sharing. There we go. So we can get back to everybody. So hopefully that was, like I said, usually I spend 3 hours talking about all that stuff. And Justin and Stephen, I appreciate your patience. I could go on for a lot more hours, but we're here to learn about what you all did in the book. And so we kind of already started talking about how you got started with this, that you watched the TED Talk that my students and I have watched, and then you kind of read the autobiography and you got started. But if I could, before we really get into this, why did you guys get into comics? Like, what's your origin story? Has it always been comics? Why are you in the comics industry? Why are you focused on that as opposed to prose? Because obviously you're both gifted writers. If you could speak to that a little bit, and if you do have any thoughts on comics and education and in the classroom, and then we'll dive right into the book.
Stephen, you wanna jump in?
Sure. I've just always been a fan of the medium from a very young age. Batman was always my favorite superhero. I think I grew up on the Adam West show, like a lot of people I know, and so that the love of that character sort of then took me to the animated series, and from there the movies, and then eventually the comics. That was kind of my journey, my path to comics, and that really opened up my world to just like the possibilities of just like, I don't know, all these different characters. Like, it just really hit me in a way where I was just like, this is my universe. I want to play in this universe. I want to get to know these characters. And, I had aspirations from a very young age that I would love to work for Marvel someday. I'd love to write and draw superheroes. I've not gotten to that point yet, but, what I like to say is that the unexpected happened, and I got to write about a real life superhero in George Takei. And I never ever dreamt, like when I started on this path, that it would lead to this. I loved making up stories and being creative, and just seeing where my imagination took me. And so writing nonfiction was a very different shift of gears. I was still using that writerly brain, but it was, a lot more research than I'm used to when it comes to writing. Usually I'm just like coming up with dialogue off the top of my head. Here I wanted to, get all the quotes right. I really wanted to. Now I'm probably just going off into derailing into a tangent that we'll get into later. But that's kind of my path to comics. Is I just really always wanted to work in comics, write in that world, and that led me to They Call Us Enemy.
I love Stephen's story because he's got a great comics story to tell here, and whereas I don't, I'm a bit more of an outlier here. So my path to comics comes through Craigslist. right? I was this college student when I discovered that I really had a knack for journalism, and I really loved the idea of sort of holding truth to power, right? And being able to go out and interview, whether it was my college newspaper or whether it was for, smaller outfits I went on to work at afterwards, just going and kind of getting in the muck and finding out what was going on and trying to piece things together. I was involved in periodical journalism for a couple of years. That's what brought me from Ohio and North Carolina out to California, where I was involved with action sports periodical publishing. It was very exciting and flashy, and a lot of, what younger me thought was very cool things happening. And in 2006, that all kind of dissolved. And I was on Craigslist looking for career opportunities. And that's where I found out this was a fairly small, scrappy company here in San Diego that was involved with comics. And I was young and naive, and I knew of X-Men and sort of this, that, and Wolverine. And I thought, comics in San Diego, these guys are going to be super rich. This would be amazing. And I drove over and realized there was very modest in a very small office plaza, and such began a really long career that really took, to be honest, Tim, it took a decade and a half for me to or a decade at least, to put together the connection between my interest personally and sort of what the medium kind of had. And I really credit Andrew, Nate, and the late Congressman John Lewis with really being the mechanism that helped me click all those things together and think, whoa, this is what we can do with this medium if we really find the right story to drill into and focus, and where can that go? And the answer and the result has been pretty spectacular. And I think that I've mentioned this on with you and other panels. If something's come out of this that's been so unexpected, it's the satisfaction of making real historical information accessible to readers of all types. And then this is where I go into this like kind of hokey territory, the belief that actually makes the world a better place, right? I feel so silly saying it, but if we help somebody know more today, maybe they'll be better tomorrow. And I know it's helped me. The things I've learned in my life have helped me be a better person. And so that all kind of spins together into a purpose now.
Yeah, and as a classroom teacher who has seen it firsthand, and I do work with elementary schools, I teach high school, my kids are in middle school, I do college work, and yeah, I'd have to say like March is kind of like the mouse of this generation in terms of, we're seeing the impact of what it's done. But what's great is you kind of sound a little shy about saying, well, you weren't always into comic books, but it's a powerful lesson for students, because it's the number one thing I hear from kids who are like, oh, I can't do comics because I'm not an artist. You don't have to be, right? You can be a publisher, you can be an editor, you can be a writer, you can be a storyboarder, there's so many more jobs. Yes, there's people who create books that they do everything and it takes them years and it almost kills them. And I know those folks too, but then there's also the team that comes together too. And I think that's powerful for students too.
And the collaborative element of that, as you're saying, the team part, Tim, is really, for me, has ended up being one of the joys of my life. For example, I love working with Steven, and I think we really complement each other really well when it comes to our creative and tendencies. And then when you bring in the artists and everyone else, there's just a lot of bigger than the sum of your parts type stuff that takes place with comics.
Yeah, agreed. So I think it'd be interesting if we could turn more of the before I ask all of my questions, I'd like to see what people in the audience would like to ask. But I just want to get one more question before I turn it out to the audience. And it's funny because, and so you believe me, I have it, my question in biggest bold, and you kind of hit on it in the beginning. And I was like, oh, he went there. You talked about other graphic memoirs. My question literally was, what other stories would you like to see as a graphic memoir? Like what's missing? What do you think we need to have? I have my own thoughts, but I'd be curious to see what you all think.
Tim, I'd love to answer your question, but I think my agent would have a heart attack,
Oh yeah. No. I meant more like I got you.
Well, I have a very good example for this, and for anyone on the call who I worked with IDW Publishing for a long time, and I have recently parted ways with them in the past sort of couple months, and so it's a new territory for me. But in my last time there, I was working closely with the Smithsonian Institution to bring a lot of history that's locked in the Smithsonian into this medium, and that was really I'm about to cough. Excuse me.
But it's funny that you mentioned the Smithsonian, because I was at AwesomeCon in DC, and the Smithsonian was there, and there was a guy and he had this big wooden case that was open, and in it he had all these mini comics that he had made and it's on my website. You can, under the free comics, and they're all about Japanese internment camps and Japanese Americans. It happened to be what he brought. And so he teaches students how to make a comic from one page, how to fold it, the hamburger, the hot dog, you cut it and you have it. And I use that with my students. But here's the Smithsonian, like you said, they went into the archives, we're like, we have all these great stories. And so I do that with my students is in, like, say, the civil rights movement. I'll have a list of pages of people. We're talking about LGBTQ, we're talking about female, we're talking about different races and so forth. And you pick a name of somebody you haven't heard of before and create them into a superhero, or create them, what would their powers be? Who would be on their team? Who would their arch enemies be? And create a comic book about them. But what's fascinating is when it happens is a lot of times my students will say, well, but can I do this person? It's somebody that they already either they've talked about in their family, or it's part of their family lore. And they like, wow, I can make this into a comic book. Somebody that I'm already passionate about, someone that we don't normally talk about in the classroom, and that I want to share with my classmates. And so all of a sudden, we've got 30 new biographies in an exciting and engaging format. And we do a gallery walk. We walk around the class. We read everybody's comics. And in one class period, we've done more learning on people that normally aren't talked about that I couldn't do in a month of just me teaching.
Yeah, that's true. Well, here, I'll throw one out real quick, and I'll let Stephen talk. I'm sorry, Stephen. And that's here's one I think that would be interesting story to tell. And that's people that we sort of hold up as pillars of American society that maybe have more shades to their story than the average person is aware of. One that comes to mind is, say, somebody like Henry Ford. And if you think about that and you start to, pull out, there's a lot of people that start to fall into that pile of where you're like, oh, I know this story. Do you? And, for example, David Walker does a great job with like the Frederick Douglass biography he did last year, and the Black Panther Party. And those are good examples I can think of off the top of my head, where you take familiar names and pieces of our American story and you explore them in a lot more detail in the ways that graphic novels allow us to do. Stephen, how about you? Any that you can share?
Yeah, there's a couple that spring to mind. One of them is Black Wall Street. I know that there's a comic creator that we know who is very interested in telling that story. I would love to read a graphic novel version of that story just to learn more about it, things that I didn't know. So that's a part of history I think that deserves the graphic novel treatment. For myself as well, I wouldn't mind telling my own story at some point. I've got something cooking, but I don't know how much more I can say about it right now. But yeah, I definitely, having worked on this graphic novel, this graphic memoir with George, has really opened my eyes up to the possibilities of other stories you can tell in nonfiction graphic storytelling. And so yeah, it started to get me thinking about, like, do I have a story to tell? Because I love this medium, and I love reading other people's graphic memoirs and putting myself in their shoes for a little bit and kind of experiencing what's life like as this person. I wouldn't have ever thought that way of living or that experience, or just like until I actually got to read about someone else's experience, and through that medium just like really is a transportive thing. And so yeah, I love going on those journeys. So yeah, I want to do something for myself at some point.
All right, you both have me really curious. I can't wait to hear announcements coming at some point. I will say that I wrote, and this is down the road, but I'm actually writing a book that's coming out, just like teaching with comics, like lesson plan stuff. But
Awesome.
After watching George's, Mr. Takei's TED Talk, I actually wrote my first comic book script on an event that happened in that TED Talk that just, if you've watched a TED Talk, you probably know what I'm talking about. And it just leaves us completely speechless. And it hasn't been told in comics form yet. And I very much want to make that into a comic book. And so I also want to do that. And I was talking to Andrew Iden about it actually at AwesomeCon as well. So yeah, I think you're right. These types of stories, and once we get past that, I can't do it kind of a thing. And I think it's important that we empower our students to feel that they can do it as well. But yeah, I'm excited to hear what you two are, what you have cooking up here.
Well, sorry to be coy. It's not out of choice, believe me.
No. I totally get it. We have one question so far from Paul. So Paul, he already unmiked himself. He's a pro. You're welcome to unmic yourself. You already have your camera on, and please ask away.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity and for the information you're sharing. I was just thinking about like how unique an experience it must have been for you guys to be creating something where the person it's about is actually like living and there and able to talk to you about it during the process. So I was just wondering if George Takei like gave any type of like advice and feedback. Like, did he look at the illustrations and read some of the dialogue and have things to say to you about like, you know, moving through the story?
Very much. And if I wasn't afraid of blowing the screen share, I would pull up some photos that I've got on my computer of us all interacting, doing that sort of very thing, you know, showing. We actually had a first of all, everything, the whole book, I mean, this is George's story. Stephen and I were involved as facilitators of helping George port that story from his telling of it and his living of it into a medium that we were more familiar with, right? And that we could help make it work in this sort of medium. And then Harmony, like Tim pointed out earlier, she was the sauce that just brought it all together and really made it sing in the way it has. But yes, George was involved in every single aspect of this, from the, I mean, dozens and dozens of hours we spent on video or phone calls with him, talking things over, you know, from bigger picture to then, you know, here's the things we're writing. Can you, I mean, I remember the first time we sent him a section to read and, you know, we're getting feedback, you know, it was very intimidating, you know, and eventually we got to create a really great, comfortable working relationship with a lot of trust and back and forth. Stephen, please jump in and add some extra color.
Sure. I remember initially when we first began, Brad had said to us, you know, imagine you're doing a biography on someone who is no longer with us, who's not living. How would you approach that? Think of it in those terms, first of all, like, because George has told this story many times. He's written about it in his autobiography, To the Stars. He said maybe that would be a good place to start for you guys, so that, you know, the story is already theirs. And it pretty much was there intact. And there wasn't much more for us to mine or get details out of George that wasn't already out there in the ether or had been written about. And so, you know, it made the process pretty streamlined as far as like, it's all there. We just have to find a way to contextualize it and put it in a way that's it's easily digestible for readers. And from there, you know, George was able to see what we did and then make changes or specify, actually, it was this, not that, you know, just like really get in there with his lived experience. Like, we really had the benefit of having someone who had lived that part of history. It was kind of mind-blowing to me at times that we were speaking to somebody, not that it was George Takei necessarily, but that it was someone who had lived this part of history that actually was still alive and around to tell it. You know, it doesn't make it feel that far removed, you know, from today. And so, yeah, he was instrumental in that process and making sure all the details were right. I know when they brought him onto that mini series, The Terror Infamy, he kind of served the same role there as sort of an advisor, you know, giving them tips on like how, you know, it was actually this way. So they were very much using him in the same capacity that we were, to make sure that we were doing the story justice and telling it right and getting everything factual from somebody who had lived it. So yeah.
Well, I would say it also added an urgency, because this is history that is very close to being lost. There are books are written, you know, you know, people have recorded this before, but again, George is maybe one of the most prominent figures to publicly share and speak with this massive platform. And also he was so young, but he was young enough. Okay, so that was one of the things that makes George's story so unique. And I'm sorry we're kind of going down in the rabbit hole of this a little bit, but George was young enough at camp that he wasn't entirely aware of what was happening around him, which we discuss in the book and really go into. And one of the reasons he has had the perspective to share his story over all these years is because his father talked to him about it after the internment, which George told us in our preliminary calls. Hey, this is really unusual in Japanese American families. You guys are going to find out. A lot of families didn't talk about this, and mine was totally unusual because my dad was not afraid to talk about it. We argued about it, you know, and you've seen those scenes in the book. But because of this, I know a lot more about what's happened than I would otherwise. And so, you know, his memory is a combination of his lived experience and the memories as passed down to him from his dad with a little bit of his perspective. And And so as you know, what we would talk about, I mean, George is an 82 or 83-year-old man. And, you know, this history is his, the story is his, but it will not be here forever in perpetuity. But now we've done a part to help capture that in the most fly on the wall, honest perspective that he has to share. And I think that to us, as we worked on it, that, you know, the importance of that really added another level of, you know, this has to be right. This has got to be more than right. This is everything.
And I think I think it's important that you. I'm sorry, Paul. Go ahead. I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say thank you for your answer and thank you for the important work.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Thank you for joining us today.
But Justin, you had brought up, and I think it feeds into this whole model minority type thing. What I love is, and I didn't know before reading the graphic novel about the dissenters, the no-nos, you know, the dissenters in the camps who were training with the idea that Japan would land in the United States, the Japanese forces would land in the United States, that we had turned these people against our own country, American citizens against our own country, who now are like, yeah, we are against the United States, and we are going to train, and we are going to help out Japan if they do invade. And I think it adds a whole layer of, no, these, you know, and that's a question even I get from my students all the time about, well, why didn't the Jews fight back? Of course they did. You know, Warsaw and I mean, all that stuff. And I think that's this book is so nuanced, and you didn't shy away from any of that history in here, and the depth of, in a relatively small book, that we can have that just wouldn't happen in a prose book.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I mean, you know, one of the things I think we were able to do as we went into the later stages of editing with our editor Lee Walton, and again, this is with his additional perspective brought in. Lee, of course, was the editor on March books 2 and 3, so he's got a lot of experience in working on these, you know, serious, very, you know, research demanding and research intensive sort of projects. And one of the things Lee brought in and helped us, I think, pushed us to be better than we were, was really continuing to layer as much as we could into everything, and it really trying to do as little wasted space as possible. And you know, that's tough. And I've worked, that's a hard standard to hold yourself to. Sometimes working from like draft 1 of a script, you're not going to be there. So you got to just let yourself get to that, dialing it in, kind of like, you know, when you're at the ophthalmologist and they're flipping like, which is sharper, 1 or 2, and you kind of just keep going through until you get the thing to really be as sharp as it can be. And that's really the byproduct of that process, getting it to be where we were able to get 204 pages to have an awful lot of American history in there.
And Lee Walton, it should be noted, is we share an editor with March. You know, he edited the March trilogy, of course, and so all the lessons he learned on working on those books, you know, he was able to bring over to ours. And one of the things he imparted on me that really stuck was, you know, he said he would say this to Andrew when they were working on March, is, you know, where's Congressman Lewis? Where's our hero? You know, if they ever kind of lost him in the plot, like, where is he in all this action? And so he would say that to me, where sometimes we would go off and tell, well, this was happening and this was happening with the Japanese American community. They were getting rounded up over here. And he's like, okay, but where's the hero? Where's the Takeis and all of this? And so always wanted to kind of keep it through their lens, you know, and not lose them in the plot.
It's funny that you say that. Laura House Anderson wrote a Wonder Woman comic called Tempest Tossed, and it's about modern immigration and things. And it's just, I was talking to her at Keystone Comic-Con before she printed it, and she said, yeah, I was told from DC Comics, I have so many pages and I have to fit the entire story into this many pages. And my first instinct was like, well, who are you to tell Laurie Halse Anderson she can only have, but I think a lot of people don't realize that. And again, like you just said, you have to appreciate that in, like you just said, all that history in, 100 and some odd pages, and you only have so much room and you only have so much space in a comic book. But not to be cheesy, but a picture's worth 1,000 words kind of a thing. And to write this book in prose, the size of this, right? And so this takes away a lot of times, not to take anything away from the autobiography, but if you hand this to a student or you hand this to a student, right, you take away a lot of that anxiety, and then it leads you to other research. It leads you to other discussions. And that's what your book does, and why I'm so appreciative of the work that you all did here. So we do have other questions. Go
Oh,
ahead.
Tim, I would say, Tim, earlier you were like talking about graphic novels versus prose and sort of how we got into graphic novels. I would say one of the things I love about I have a background in journalism and trying to write long form stuff. And one of the things I love about graphic novels is so much of what is on the page is never seen by the public. Right. It's all description. And some scripts are different. You know, sometimes you can just say very little, but other times it's a whole lot. And you know, with a book that was as detailed as this one, there was a lot of script that went into it, a lot of research, a lot of sort of telling Harmony what we needed from her, and a little bit less of that, you know, open interpretation. It wasn't, let's put it this way, it was not the Marvel method employed on this book.
No.
You know, it was quite the opposite of that. And so I think that's something, you know, different projects will come at, but what's fun is, again, kind of talking about how much you can get in there. You know, we don't have to spend time explaining the thought process. You just show it. And so you get to just cut out so much of the white noise of prose and just let the one half of our brain cover all that in an instant by seeing it. So.
Mhm. Yeah, and to your point, Tim, about you know, this is just one family's story that we're showing of 120,000. So I like to always point that out. You know, you say we pack so much history into this this graphic novel, but then yeah, within that, there's just like so many other stories that we could have told. It's just one of so many. So yeah, that kind of, when I think about it, yeah, it just kind of reminds you that yeah, we're able to see it through the Takeis, through their eyes, but you know, if we didn't know who George Takei was, it might not bring as much attention. You know, being able to use his platform to get it out to as many people as possible, it really puts a face that we're familiar with, that everyone, you know, he's a beloved figure. I think it kind of gives this message to people that like this could happen to anybody, right?
And that's the brilliance of, you know, when I say 6 million Jews to my students, or 18 million Africans in the African Holocaust, or like you said, you know, hundreds of thousands Japanese Americans and so forth, you just get lost in all that. But when you boil it down to one family, and when you boil it down to one person, and then what that does is it ignites the curiosity of the students, and then they want to know more. And that's all we want. We need to start somewhere. But when you start with those giant numbers, when you start with, you know, here's all these camps, and let's just talk about the emotional impact on one family and what happened. And I think that's a very powerful tool that we have.
And Tim, if I can expand on that for just a second, I mean, so much of that is based on this idea of, and this, I thought we would jump into this earlier, was the empathy, right? You know, books like this all build empathy by building this sort of idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. You can really, it transports you in a different perspective and a different point of view. And you know, it's just so important, such an important medium for us to be able to do that, and to have done that with this book. And that's one of the beauties of, like, again, putting it with this one family, a young George Takei. He's, you know him. He's this gentleman you've seen on the King of the Internet, but here he was as a child. So yes, here's how he's like you. He grew up from a child to a person. This can happen to you over here. And then, sorry, I got a little bit, I did my little, I'm picturing what I'm saying as I'm saying it. I'm like, and then, I lost my stupid thought, guys. I'm so sorry. I was building to a big finale, and I got lost in the wilds. I'll think about it again. But
you got the empathy part in. I think that absolutely.
That was one of the main things. Absolutely, building the empathy. Oh, I'm sorry. It was this whole idea, and this gets back to the title. They called us enemy. It's sort of about this idea of othering groups, right? We're talking about it in Asian American Pacific Islander month. We're talking about it in a lot of other months. This idea of creating an other. It's very hard, you know, if you think about somebody that you know, and it's like, hey, would you vote or make a decision to withhold food or housing or safety from person X that you know and you can see? And a lot of us would say, absolutely not. I would never do that. That would be cruel and inhumane. Why would I do that? But then we act like with impunity to make those same decisions against a faceless sort of other. And the sort of one of the part of the magic of this book, and even in the period in which it landed in 2019, amidst so much turmoil, you know, here domestically, was that message of, don't be so quick to assume you know what someone else's position is, or don't fall for that. Don't let someone else tell you how to think about another group of people. And this ties into that big empathy branch and this idea of like, again, what a book like this can do for hopefully making people just be better people.
It was that simple, right?
It's just that simple.
You made me think of, I show a clip from a Denzel Washington movie, and it's Escape. I can't think of the title now, but there's a Muslim attack. He's worked for the government, and they round up Muslim Americans and they put them in camps in New York City. And this film came out before 9/11, and I showed the kids the trailer, and then we also talk about Fred Korematsu, and there's a graphic novel. It's a small one from the Fred Korematsu Institute.
Yeah.
And they begin talking with Fred, but before him, they talk about a couple Muslim Americans talking after 9/11 and what they were afraid of, what might happen. And it seems implausible. And then you go to the Japanese internment camps, and then it comes back to current day, kind of like how They Call This Enemy talks about, what should we call them, the immigration camps, that we've seen not only
Relocation centers.
Yeah, right. And honestly, not just under President Trump, but still there under President Biden. And we can talk about who's handling it better, things like that. But you're right, that other, and that is what's so dangerous about all this type of thing. And you're making an other a very empathetic, very personal, very normal, relatable family and a person that you were able to do in a graphic novel. I think even more so than the TED Talk can, right? Because that seems like this highly professional, staged kind of a thing, although it's made me cry the first couple of times I watched it. But I think the comic does it in a way that even that can't do.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. So if
I mean,
you don't mind,
it was an honor to be part of it and to work with it. So that's 100%.
I want to get to Caroline's question, but it's funny because Star Trek is such an important thing to my family. Like, I can't even imagine trying to talk to George Takei about a graphic novel without like freaking out every time. Like, my social media would be like, oh, I talked to George today. Oh yeah, this is my buddy George. Like, I can't even imagine what that part of it all would be like, let alone to be professional enough to pull yourself away from the fan aspect of it and focus so beautifully on the historical aspect of all this. Like, it's just,
Luckily for me, I grew up a Star Wars kid, so I didn't have that. You know, if this was a book about Mark Hamill, then I'd be freaking out the whole way through.
I'm gonna second Stephen there. If I was talking to Mark every day, I think that the small version of me would have been a little more like, what? How's the Force today, Mark? But instead, but you're right. Listen, there was something really heady about knowing that you're talking to somebody that has that kind of platform and can make or break things with sort of their ability to bring them attention. It was very, very cool. It's old hat now, but once upon a time it was really electrifying for sure. And like I said, it just speaks to what a great person George and his husband Brad are, that we've been able to become such close friends beyond just a working relationship of getting the book out.
Brad is a freaking riot. I follow him on social media. Like, anyway. So, Caroline, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. If you want to, you can unmic yourself and you can ask the question yourself, or I can just ask the question for you. We'd love to see you and hear from you if you are so brave. No, should I just go ahead and ask your question?
I think she wants you to ask it, Tim.
All right.
Go ahead.
So she's asking, did George Takei see his story as a graphic novel in the initial pitch? Was there, that's a good question. Was there some resistance from folks about the medium of using the graphic memoir to tell his story?
No, there really wasn't any resistance. It was really a case of the way we pitched it to them was, I reached out. I had already worked on a comic book project with the Takeis prior. During my days at Archie, he guest starred in an issue of Kevin Keller, which is the first gay Archie character. And so that was sort of the first initial experience working with them in comics. And then when this idea came around and Justin presented of like, hey, I've seen The Power of March. I've seen what, telling stories about history can do in comics. I think that this story is, perfect for, like being the next March essentially. And it was really, that was where it stemmed from. And I sent them the March trilogy from there. I said, hey, check these out. We want to give George's story the March treatment. We want to do what, they've done with, Congressman Lewis's story and tell it in this format. What do you think? And that really kind of sealed the deal once they saw those books.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a lot of people in my house when I couldn't ask the question before.
Oh, that's okay, Carolyn. Thanks.
Carolyn.
We're good to hear your voice. I'll tell you. I'll give you a little bit of like inside baseball since for our group here today, and that's that when we were speaking at the ALA annual in 2019 before the book came out, and we were speaking to the big crowd there, and I'll never forget that it was over 2,000 people, because that's a number that when you're told before you're speaking to 2,000 people, you kind of don't forget that, oh my gosh, it's a lot of people. I don't want to mess up. And we went out there, and a lot of great questions came out of the audience that day in the Q&A portion, some that have really influenced me in my publishing career, like to this day. But one was essentially about, I'm sorry, I had a light on my house and the battery keeps going out. This person basically said, George, have you thought about doing a book like this for young readers? And I remember there being a little bit of confusion after the panel, because it was like, well, we just did a graphic novel, isn't that for young readers? And we said, well, to be fair, you could do a picture book, you could go down, but it was just it was interesting because there was already that expectation of, oh, you're gonna do this for even a younger audience, and then that, again, the discussions of what audiences, et cetera, et cetera. So.
It's funny you say that. Every once in a while, I'll post pictures of my classroom. Like I like to decorate for each thing that we do. And of course, it's always comics and posters and things like that. And every once in a while, a friend who's known me forever says, oh, I thought you taught high school. When did you start teaching elementary school? And I had the same reaction of, okay, give me a half an hour and I'll show you why, these comics and graphic novels and why there's such a high literacy and things like that. And I will say, I just heard, so the stamped book. So of course there's the by Ibrahim Kendi. You have the original version. Then you have the Jason Reynolds for younger readers, and now you just have, and I forget her name. She adapted it for young readers, and now they're also making that into a graphic novel. So like we have all these different layers of all these different types of books and different mediums, and just trying to reach people in different ways, and it's just fantastic.
Well, I'll use a good example. Some of my favorite books are the little like the Quirk books, little golden books, where they do like little golden like Ghostbusters or little golden like Back to the Future. Yeah, and you've taken these, old man properties now and turned them into something that you can hand to like somebody under 10 years old, and it brings it a whole fresh new life to it. So,
Tim, I'm so sorry to cut out early. I have kind of a hard stop now because I got to run and pick up my kid. Otherwise, my daycare is going to be mad at me. But
oh no.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll allow my esteemed co-author Justin to, I guess, tackle the questions from here. I know he'll do great. And I think
Stephen.
Someone chiming in about Mark Hamill, so that's great.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Take care.
Thank you, guys. Take care. I'll see you next time.
All right. So we really, unless anybody else has any questions, because we are getting towards the hour mark, but we have one other question. If you have any others, feel free to throw them in the chat. But we have one, and it's a good question. How long did it take to publish They Call This Enemy? Like, I guess how long does this whole process take?
That's a good question. I actually have some pretty good dates in mind, because the team was talking about them recently for some other stuff. And so the first public announcement of the book was in like March or April of 2017. And then the book was published in July 2019. So it took about 2.5 years, which is pretty truncated in the world of graphic novel publishing, to get a full script written and all the art drawn in that sort of limited time. Again, we were definitely helped by a couple of factors. One, George had the autobiography already written, so a big chunk of things was us just deciding what we could pull out of that existing structure and adapt ultimately into our book. And then we worked with, as you know, filling in all these other sort of the other side of all these experiences with like what was happening and why they were happening. And then Harmony did a fantastic job basically doing the impossible of making an aggressive deadline to get the book out in time. I forget how or why July of 19. Well, I know we decided to release it at Comic-Con in 19, and the idea was like, well, let's have George Takei come to the floor at San Diego Comic-Con. That might be kind of a big deal, and you can imagine it was. So it was really, but that meant we had to have a firm deadline, and Harmony did. I remember when she showed up for those signings and a couple events before the book was, right when it was getting on deadline, right, it was about to go to print. we went to an event in New York to do a did you ever see the video trailers we made for the book? They were sort of like George talking and being interviewed and he's talking about the book. We flew to New York City and did this sort of like pre-release press thing. And Harmony showed up, she just had all this shoulder pain. I'm like, well, are you okay? She's like, oh, it's from drawing. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And she was like, like in pain. We go to dinner or something. She'd go stand in the corner and stretch for a while. Just, and I told her, I was like, we'll never be able to pay you for pushing yourself so hard to make this happen, and she said, don't worry. And when next time we work together, I'm gonna have a lot more time, right? And I said, I want to work together again, and yes, I'll make sure you get more time. So those were, we'll see if we can keep up with all those promises, right? Wow. But yeah, so it took about 2.5 years, which is not a lot of time. Other publishers that I'm been working with and speaking with more recently, their window is more like 4 years. Get the whole thing done and have a year before it even goes to market, just to shop it around to people like you, Tim, and let you get excited about things and get those review quotes and all that. That whole a little less comic book publishing, more publishing, I guess.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot more regular publishers expanding the to graphic novels and comics, which is awesome. So
very cool.
Yeah, and I remember I stood in line. So I had a panel at San Diego Comic-Con at the library, and I had to run with my kids, my wife, run in the convention center because I was going to be the first in line to meet John Lewis when they released March, and I was. And I remember shaking his hand, and he was talking to Andrew and Nate, and my kids were there, and he shook my kids' hands, and it was I'm like, you guys don't understand who you're meeting. But for a little bit, he was just kind of like an older man saying, my hand hurts from signing, and I'm like, would you sign my book? Like, I felt bad. Like, the thing's right, you don't think about with all that. But
I can only imagine how many books that he signed. We did a limited edition signed hardcover for the release of the book, and I think we only did like 1,000 copies. But we still had to sign. Each of us had to sign 1,000 sheets. Yeah, and it's a lot. I have a time lapse photo on my phone of me doing them. I basically just sat down and did it all in like 30 minutes or something, and just knocked them all out. And yeah, it makes your hand hurt. So I can only imagine the congressman. Oh my gosh, he signed so many things. So what a guy.
So we have another question from Caleb. Caleb, would you like to ask it, or do you want me to ask it?
I'll do it if you don't mind toddler background noise. I just want to know, where do you think history comics are going to go beyond biography, or are we just in the moment where biography is hot?
That's a good question, Caleb. I think they're going to continue to expand, and it's going to be twofold. One, people in publishing will think that the good topics have already been covered, so they'll kind of get scared of like it's like in Hollywood, you can imagine they only want to put money in if they think they're going to make the money, and so there are all these decisions about what's marketable and whatnot. So I think that will put some force of the direction. But the other will be interest of people like myself who are creating the comics and our continued understanding that we can apply that sort of idea to a lot of different topics. It doesn't have to just be a biography. It can be historical. It can be any sort of complicated topic of any kind. And I there's a phrase I was using, and I used this on a panel like last week with David Walker. And I said, David, sometimes I feel like when we're doing books that have so much data compared to like the images, we're doing infographic novels. And I was like, I think Caleb, we're going to see a little bit of that synthesis of where it will just be such a powerful storytelling tool. It's just going to become more standardized across publishing.
Yeah, and I'd have to say, as an educator, and I've had people send me comics and we're like, what are your thoughts on this? Part of the danger is people are trying to capitalize on finally America's catching up with the rest of the world and interest in comics, and you just see where the images really don't add much to the story at all, or you see so much text that and so it's hard to give that kind of feedback, but you have to be honest about it. And I noticed in the beginning, some of these larger textbook companies were doing that. And I got all excited. I'm like, oh, there's a comic book in their textbook. And it was just awful. And so there is a difference. There is definitely a difference in why we choose a comic as opposed to a prose. Yeah.
Well, and that's a great example, Tim. I've seen that too. And it's really, kind of grading, and I've spent between 2016 and 2020, I was sort of doing a lot of work with Penguin Random House. So I was going to New York very frequently. And I remember in those 5 years, I went from being one of the few graphic novel publishers in the room to everybody, all the big, everybody was in there trying to be in the game because they had watched it just explode. So that has been really like kind of interesting to watch that transformation. And you're absolutely right. You know, just because picture books are different than graphic novels, just so it's not a one-to-one. Somebody can't have a long career in picture books necessarily just jump in and understand the storytelling beats and how art works in a graphic novel. And for me, I would just say, when we were working on the script, and we kind of had two methods to knowing if we were doing things well. One, were we crying? Or, you know, and Harmony tells a story about, you know, drawing these pages, just being in tears. And Steve and I had plenty of late nights on the phone with each other where we were both, you know, just upset about what we were having to contend with and everything. That's just part of this whole process is wading through all that mess to get to the good stuff, and then you know, hoping that it all pays off. I got, sorry, by the way, again, I had another good thought. I got Friday afternoon where I had, it's 5 o'clock Friday. All of a sudden my brain's like, hey, what are you doing? That's not, and by the way, that's not me wanting to get off. I could talk about the book forever. So
on a holiday weekend, no less. Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, because I can't see your full name. Is it Mojave? If I'm saying that right, but did you want to ask your question, or did you want me to ask it? All right, I'll ask it. So the question is, do you think there would be, it's a good leading question, but I kind of had the same question. I wasn't going to ask it. So I'll blame the audience. Do you think that you would do another comic from you guys in the future about AAPI type issues, maybe racism today, that the history, those sorts of things?
You know, there's a couple different ways I'd approach that question. Yes, I think books like that should exist. No, I don't want to stand here and say that I'm the person who should be telling those stories. You know, in this case, what They Call Us Enemy, like as I sort of mentioned earlier, it was a lot of dumb luck that kind of led to the team falling together the way it did. And then I think we were all really pleased with, again, with the results, and the results were really kind of what drove the ship. It wasn't this decision of, again, own voices and whatnot, but and really just facilitating George telling his story. So I think that there needs to be more stories telling Asian American stories, period. And I know that there's several in development. I know that a lot of publishers are interested in that. I've even before April started, I saw a lot of activity on Twitter from all types of acquisitions editors, all up and down the publishing field, looking for stories of you know, Asian American and Pacific Islander sort of history and stories. I personally have heard and been pitched several that were really compelling, and I hope that they find homes. And you know, I grew up reading like fiction, like so many people, right? A fiction, fantasy. Oh, this stuff's so cool. I love having like, oh, this great worlds, all these, you know, world building. Somewhere along the line, a switch flipped, and I became a truth is stranger than fiction kind of guy. And I really, you know, one of the reasons I think I'm been okay at what I'm doing in this medium is I just love research, and I don't mind falling down a rabbit hole of 20 different internet tabs. Because one led me to the other, and all of a sudden, you know, you're getting to some information you didn't have before, and then you're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe nobody knows this. Or even that moment, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I don't know this. What kind of book is on Amazon? And you go to Amazon and you realize there's no book, and you're like, how does that happen? How is this secret, or how is information lost in a society where we're in the information age, and yet, you know, we certainly seem to be able to convince ourselves that we don't know very much, or should I say that we know everything when we maybe don't know everything. So I
talk to my students about that. There's two ways to control a population. One is you directly censor the information that's out there, but scarily enough, the other way to do it is where we are, where you have so much information, you just lose it. And how do you find those stories and those sorts of things? And so to what you were saying is, whether fictional characters or graphic memoirs, we're not just seeing like a Miles Morales. We're not just seeing like an America Chavez. We're not just seeing our heroes change gender or race, but we're also seeing the creators and the authors that are beginning to we're changing the old white guy in the office kind of a thing. And we're not 100% there yet. But in terms of telling own stories and things like that, I mean, this is certainly different. I mean, this, like you said, this is George's story, that he's telling the story through you all. But I think what you said really just spoke volumes of recognizing that sometimes we need to get out of the way and let others tell their stories.
Yeah, and you know, I understand how that's difficult, but it's very important. And I know that you know, for a long time as an editor, I saw my role, again, it was a lot of people like, oh, you're a gatekeeper. Sure, I guess I am, but I want to be a champion. I want to celebrate the things that I think are important and help them have more of a platform, them, help them get more attention. And one of the things that sort of happened, that I was kind of involved in, that sort of, I guess, helped steer me into they call this enemy waters, was working on foreign acquisitions for a couple of years, and working with you know, a lot of you know, creators out of France and Spain, and looking at the books they're creating and trying to sell to the American publishers, and me looking at them saying, that's another cop drama, that's another fantasy, that's another this. Oh, what's this book about the Tiananmen Square incident that was written by a guy who was there? I want to see that. That's to me sounds like it's telling a story that maybe we don't know. And looking for those sorts of stories, again, because truth is stranger than fiction, right? It was so much weirder to know. You know, again, one of the more challenging books I've ever worked on is called Burmese Moons, and it's by Sophie Ansel and Sam Garcia. It's a book about human trafficking and all the stateless children in Myanmar, Burma, and that whole part of the world. Oh my gosh! I mean, I honestly, the first time I read that book in its entirety was about this time of the day on a Friday, and it ruined my weekend. It was so powerful, and the story it's told was so bleak, and like, it's just, there's so much that can be done with the medium. It's really amazing.
Yeah. All right. So, gee, Erica said thank you. It's only 20 miles from the Santa Anita Assembly Center. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's, well, Erica, before you run, like, I mean, one thing that, again, George told us so much about what to expect from the audience when we were working on the book. And another one was this, and it was, again, back to the whole, like, families don't speak about this. And so George said, hey, you know, it won't be uncommon. You know, he's like, oh, when I'm doing my autographs or signings, people come up to me and tell me, oh, their mother, their grandfather, their uncle was imprisoned. And George would ask them, oh, do you know at which camp? And they would almost never know, because the family hadn't talked about it. They just, the whisper, grandma was in the camp. And then as Stephen and Harmony and I started experiencing that firsthand, it was really overpowering and overwhelming, because we three sort of youngish creators are inadvertently helping people tap into long lost and long latent family history that they might have otherwise not even been addressing. And that's, you know, that's something you don't expect when you're working on a book.
That's powerful. I mean, beyond measure. I remember, not to mention again, but Laura Hulse Anderson, they did a graphic novel version of Speak, and there's sexual abuse in my history as a child, and there's a panel in here, and I had never spoken to anybody about it, and now I talk to my students about it, and I talk to my students about my depression and my social anxiety, and it's had a powerful effect. And I wasn't able to do that as a younger person, but I had read the book, and it's about a girl, if you don't know, loosely based on Laurie's own experiences, who was raped as a 9th grader in high school. But there's a panel in there that connected to me and my experiences as a male. And I remember I told her about it, and she said, well, we're family now. And she said the amount of people, the emotional, like, I can't imagine, and it's got to be the same for you, Justin, like, that emotional weight, as powerful and as a good thing as it is, I mean, that's just, talk about a legacy and the positive impact that you're having on people. I mean, that's just amazing. And I applaud that immensely.
Well, like I say, there's some things in your life that you don't expect that kind of help you recalibrate and reconsider who you are or what you're doing. And those are the sort of things that are like that, you know, that it's not just fun and games all the time, you know, and there's real weight to some of these. I mean, there's a real weight to everything. And sometimes just we need little reminders that that we can have a big impact with, you know, what I'm going to call, you know, underplay as a small action, but, you know, the things we do really do have an impact. And which goes back to, like, not othering people and just treating people with respect. And just so many of these things are all kind of thematically tied together loosely in terms of just citizenship, and I think maybe a lesson that I feel like is lost on so much of the population right now, after the pandemic and after everything we've all lived through for 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, if you love America, you love Americans. I mean, it should be that simple, right?
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
funny. Erica just she said she mistyped. It's one paragraph now, because when she said she had a whole chapter in her textbook in the Japanese, I was like, wow, that's pretty. Actually, that's fantastic. When she said one paragraph, yeah, I think that's more accurate. If
That sounds more like it, right?
Of most textbooks, and being where a lot of the textbooks come from, I won't get into the politics of that, but it kind of, it's why we have to stay away from just using the textbook in the classroom, and books like yours certainly do that. So I'll put it out there one more time. Are there any other questions for Justin?
And I'm sorry, it's just me, guys. I know it's way less cool than we know with Stephen and Harmony and George, of course. So I apologize for just having me and just Justin. I know it's right there in the name.
Yeah, that's all right. So Justin, again, and what's cool is, and I said this in the beginning, there was a lot of teachers who contacted me who said they wanted to watch this video and they wanted to use this video in their classrooms, and I think that's awesome. So again, we've been talking about They Called Us Enemy, based on this is the graphic memoir of George Takei on his experiences in the Japanese American internment camps. I remember watching him speak, and I've never seen him really get angry. And he said, when people call it Japanese internment camps, it's Japanese American internment camps. Like, these are American citizens in a lot of cases. His own mother lost her American citizenship. I didn't know that until reading the graphic novel, but we need to understand that. So again, I use this in my classroom. If you ever have any questions on how to do that, I'm more than happy to help you. And you can reach out to Justin too on social media as well. And so I really just, again, Justin, want to thank you for wonderful information, because what you add to this is the process, the history, the access. It's amazing. So I really appreciate that.
Well, Tim, I'm always happy to be available to yourself, anyone who has any questions. Again, you're doing incredible work, and I've been a fan of yours since long before we ever started talking directly. So thank you for everything you do to elevate our medium to being seen as a more respectable venue. That's fantastic. I really appreciate that. And everyone who joined us tonight on Friday, thank you very much for taking time to join and listen to us prattle on about our book. So thank you so much.
Hopefully we can do this in person at some point too, right? That'd be great. So
I forgot all about that. But yeah, that would that would be awesome too. Yeah, sometimes just outside of this little box, that'd be great.
Yeah. Although this has been the blessing of the pandemic, is that we are able to do this virtually and get together too. So I hope we continue to do these things too. So.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I don't want to lose the virtual connectivity we've all established. It's been great. So
thanks everybody for coming.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks again, Tim. Thanks everybody. Happy Memorial Day.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Yeah.